A quick message about the Black Ship. I've noticed many of you asking when the next part is coming out, so I just wanted to share a quick reminder for anyone who might not know. The Black Ship is entirely written by Akinda himself, week by week. There's no pre-existing book to work from. Each chapter is crafted from scratch. With that in mind, I'd ask you to please show Akinda some grace when you're eagerly awaiting the next chapter. He's doing his best to balance writing this incredible story with his own life and commitments. I know you appreciate the hard work and passion he pours into every part of the journey. Thank you for your patience and support. Now let's get on with the story. Nornavio Bridge. A deep, cavernous hum resonated within Redford's chest as he stared at the gallant venture, the traitor flagship. His thoughts were with Wyatt Staples, and though he would not question Clara's decision to allow him to board the ship by himself due to his bonds of loyalty and fealty, he could most definitely do so as her uncle figure. "Whatever possessed you to allow him to do such a thing, Clara?" Redford questioned through their private link while slowly repositioning the Nornavio out of cover. "Do you expect him to die due to an imprudence, my most beloved uncle?" Clara replied, her voice sweet, playful, but firm. "Don't you dare try to shift the subject of conversation, oh dreadful niece of mine," Redford commented, playing along and throwing Clara's sense of humor back at her. "I expected him to lash out in fury after the message was received, but to think he'd go to such extents—" He sighed deeply. "I am disappointed in you, Clara. You shouldn't have let him go." "Perhaps not. However, Redford, after everything he has achieved so far, does he not deserve a small indulgence?" Clara asked in a more serious but amicable tone. Though she could not see it, he narrowed his eyes. "I know your habits and twisted machinations, Clara, which is why I am confounded by such a decision. Why give in to his request, heartfelt as it was? What do you plan on winning by sending a single pilot into an enemy vessel? You cannot expect him to capture any of the traitor leaders on his own. I expect, dearest uncle, for Wyatt to secure a landing, strike fear and terror with his mere presence, and hold his position until my Royal Marines arrive. Wyatt is a sensible man driven by his need to survive, win, and fulfill his duty. Surely he will realize the folly of invading a vessel on his own and strive to do something within his abilities," Clara reassured the older man. "I am skeptical that what you've envisioned will come to pass," Redford replied without hesitation. "As I am skeptical that the words you've shared are sincere and nothing more than half-truths and veiled falsehoods able to fool but a select few." "Ah, caught with my hand inside the pantry," Clara shared a satisfied giggle. Redford felt another deep hum echo in his chest. He loved Clara dearly, but her often multi-layered plans and her tendency to play puppet master gave him a headache and heartache. "Let us then, my dear princess, imagine the most ludicrous of scenarios. Wyatt Staples goes beyond what his station and duty demands of him, all in the name of punishing the traitors who dared insult and threaten your life. Let us imagine that he captures Felicity Cintor, Casimir Caiston, and Javier Wonder. What will you gain from this, Clara?" Clara let out a short-lived chuckle. "Me? I shall gain nothing. Whether Wyatt flees, acts within my expectations, or somehow achieves his goal, it matters little to me. I shall be more than satisfied as long as he survives, and I know he will, for Wyatt does not seek empty glory nor hollow repute. However, his achievements during this battle alone would propel him further by leaps and bounds." She paused for a moment. "If his contributions were to be made widespread, I may lack the proper tactical and military training and mindset, but only an arrogant fool would deny that our victory today has been largely achieved thanks to him. Directly and indirectly. I find no shame in admitting such," Redford replied humbly. "Quite so. The traitors are fighting each other as we speak or close to it. The chaos shall contribute to his safety and impact their already wounded morale. They lost 2 ships against the Drazen, they've lost their ability to flee or fight back, and the demise of Maximilian Usurek, their lone wolf, has shattered their unity. Only their most loyal will remain," said the princess calmly. "Then, Clara, I sincerely hope that you are correct. The gallant venture has activated a comm scrambler. Wyatt is on his own inside their ship with only Leopold Dakar as his support," Redford announced. There was a moment of silence between the two, broken by the blonde woman. "He won't throw his life away. I've forbidden him from undertaking reckless actions during his incursion." Redford frowned. "Clara, What do you think Wyatt categorizes as a reckless action? Your worry is appreciated, Redford, but I trust that Wyatt will not deliver unto us any unsightly surprises, Clara replied, though her usually confident tone was lacking. If you say so, Clara. Wyatt is a simple man at heart, but his unpredictable nature and unconventional wit have yet to show us anything but surprises, Redford pointed out. Suddenly, his attention moved elsewhere. Sensors detect shuttles moving away from the gallant venture and escape pods are being launched. The other ships are following their example. Most of them are making their way to the planet, the aged commander commented. My princess, may I dispatch fighters on an intercept course? The battle is all but concluded. Your orders are once more paramount over my authority. Our fighters are occupied with keeping guard of the surrendered traitors. I'd rather have them secure them than chase fleeing vessels. These traitors are kind enough to incarcerate themselves on our behalf. We will find them, or those that survive at a later date, Clara replied coldly. There was a pause, then she let out a soft hum. Uncle, would you perhaps entertain my selfishness and wager on a gamble against me? Redford couldn't help but smile. My dear Clara, I am sound of mind. I'll leave such things for your brother, the prince, to perform. Losing is not a habit of mine, but I will entertain your thoughts. What do you wish to wager on? On whether or not our knight banneret will be able to surprise us yet again, Clara replied in a playful tone. My princess, that is a foregone conclusion, Redford replied, at the same time his attention focused on the gallant venture. Gallant venture. It didn't take long before Wyatt came across resistance. In fact, he had just barely left the hangar bay when he encountered a group of a dozen men and women rushing toward the hangar, hoping to catch any of the escaping shuttles, not knowing that their escape path was blocked by Leopold Dakar. As usual in auxilia formations, the commoners were at the front and back of the formation, while the nobles, two in this case, stood in the middle. Intruder! One of the auxilia shouted as she raised her shotgun. That was all Wyatt needed to raise his right arm, quickly aim, and squeeze the trigger. Similarly to the traitors he faced previously, her shields worked well against low-caliber firearms and stood up decently against laser weapons. But his soul snatchers made their name proud as the bullet easily pierced through her lackluster shields, ending her life. Before the rest of the group could react, he fired his guns 6 more times. 2 shots landed on the chest of a man who dropped to the ground, unmoving. Another shot claimed the life of an auxilia, aiming his rifle at him, ending him before he could fire. 1 shot hit a noble who, judging by her armor, belonged to the logistical division. Her shields were strong enough to absorb most of the impact of the bullet, but not enough to completely deplete it. Her shoulder was pierced, and a howling scream followed as she collapsed to the floor. His last 2 shots landed on 2 additional auxilia. One lost his left leg at the knee, while the other lost his life with a precise shot to his head. Lay down your weapons, Wyatt demanded, pointing his soul snatcher at them. The auxilia, taken by surprise by the sudden loss of 4 of their number plus 2 wounded, a noble among them, froze. The noblewoman was in pain, but her armor was equipped with biofoam, sealing her wound and reducing the damage received. The commoner wasn't so lucky. 2 other auxilia were on their knees, trying to stop the bleeding and applying biofoam directly to the wound. Wyatt, unmoved by the scene, stepped closer. Now! He demanded. The commoners looked at each other, not knowing what to do. Kill him! The order came from the other noble, but clearly not a combatant. He pointed at Wyatt with a shaky arm. Kill that! 2 shots rang, and the noble collapsed to the floor, choked in pain, and then exhaled one last time. He fell to the ground shortly after with a thud, his body reduced to nothing more than a roadblock. Wordlessly, Wyatt turned the barrels of his guns on the remaining commoners and the wounded noble. The silent threat was understood, and everyone tossed their guns away. Slowly, Wyatt walked forth, his guns trained on them the entire time. As he walked past one of the auxilia, he saw the man reach behind him, and in a flash, a combat knife was drawn. With a lunge, the man tried to stab his left thigh, but Wyatt reacted faster. Hitting the man's wrist with the butt of his gun with all his strength, a sickening crunch, the man's wrist was shattered and the knife fell from his grip. A second later, Wyatt dispatched him with a single shot. The remaining auxilia recoiled in fear, making sure to keep their hands well and truly up. Even the noblewoman wisely chose to remain silent with her functioning arm raised in surrender. "Don't try to leave," Wyatt warned. "The exit is blocked. Surrender, and you may live," he proclaimed before moving away from the group. Once he was far enough away, he turned his back on them and resumed his charge. It was short-lived, but a few seconds later he encountered another group of traitors led by 2 Marines. This time, the Marines showcased their training and fired upon him the moment they saw him. Trusting his shields and armor, Wyatt aimed and fired upon the leading Marines. His shields took several shots, but held strong as he took cover behind a corner. Their shields were much better, as to be expected. But still, one of the Marines fell to the ground as the other Marine took cover behind a pillar. Peeking out from cover, Wyatt saw that the Marine had been wounded on his stomach, but not enough to cause a lethal injury. Further back, he saw at least another group a dozen strong, most of them holding a standard-issue handgun. The Marine, to his credit, reacted quickly and took several shots at him without any effect. Wyatt waited until the last shot rang, then moved out of cover without hesitation and fired 4 times. 2 shots missed entirely, but the other 2 hit their mark. The first shot depleted whatever was left of the man's shields, while the second pierced the Marine's helmet, ending him in the act. The man slumped to the ground, joining his comrade to expand the small pool of blood. 4 traitors lunged forth, handguns held tightly as they aimed them at him. He noticed that none of them were commoners and wore insignias that revealed them as technicians and engineers. "Lower your weapons and surrender," Wyatt offered, his guns trained on the 4 men. The men shared a nervous look, unwilling to make the first move. Then one of them screamed and took a shot that missed Wyatt's entirely. That triggered a chain reaction, and Wyatt rushed to take cover, but not before returning fire to the traitors with a hail of bullets. He fired without aiming, just shooting in their general direction. Most shots missed, but 2 of the traitors fell to the ground, screaming in pain. Shocked by the display, the other 2 traitors shifted their attention from Wyatt and put it on their fallen comrades. It was a mistake that claimed their lives as the pilot saw his chance to aim properly and take 2 simultaneous shots. They fell to the ground, and callously Wyatt approached quickly and quietly, placed a shot on the heads of the 2 screaming, crying traitors. Turning to the rest, he saw the nobles shaking in fear, their gazes focused on the bodies of their comrades. "Drop your weapons and surrender now," Wyatt ordered, aiming a barrel at them. That was enough to snap them out of their trance. Obeying, they tossed their weapons aside. "Go to the hangar. Don't try to escape. The exit is guarded. Board any escape pods if you can and surrender. You may yet live," the pilot said before breaking off, leaving the frightened survivors behind. As he made his way more cautiously, he checked his shields and saw they were at 70% and slowly recharging. After half a minute of advancing, Wyatt checked his soul snatchers, and he saw that he still had 2 shots on his right and 4 on the left. He considered reloading his weapons when he noticed 2 small groups of traitors right ahead with the aid of the map and the IFF indicator. Halting and pressing his back against the wall, he peeked over the corner to find the traitors shouting, pointing their guns at each other. "Cowardly traitors! Step back! In the name of Lady Felicity, we shall board that escape pod, not you!" cried one Marine, while 4 auxilia forces supported him and 2 more shakily held handguns behind them. On the other side, a group of 9 stood against them. "Lady Felicity has doomed us. We don't plan to stay here and face our demise thanks to her blunder." The Marine leading the second group replied with only 2 auxilia members and other non-combatant nobles and commoners precariously holding pistols and rifles supporting him. Inspecting the hallway, Wyatt found their point of contention a few meters closer to him, the entrance to a still unoccupied escape pod. Remembering the layout of the Noir Navio while the 2 groups continued to argue, he looked around his immediate area. It didn't take long before he found what he was looking for, a small lever in front of him marked with a simple logo depicting a barricade. Silently, he crawled over to the level and pulled it down. A small hidden weapon locker opened, revealing a set of rifles, half a dozen handguns, 2 shotguns, ammunition, and a bandolier of grenades. Taking the bandolier, he moved back against the wall and peeked over the edge to find the traitors still arguing, neither side willing to take the first shot. In a quick motion, Wyatt pressed the activating button on all 5 grenades, then tossed them down the hallway toward the traitors. Hunkering down, he waited for a few seconds until a panicked scream reached him. "Shit! Grenade!" Whoever saw the grenades land was too late to do anything else, as the explosion rumbled all across the intersecting hallways. Wyatt's ears rang, and he felt the shock wave course through his body for a few seconds. Stepping out of the corner, he found the two groups had been nearly eliminated. Then, he heard the screams of pain. Not all traitors had died, but none had come unscathed from the explosion. Uncaringly, Wyatt reached the center of the explosion and saw 5 survivors. He aimed his handguns and fired a merciful shot that ended their suffering. Moving away from the hallway, he calmly reloaded his soul snatchers and continued on his way, albeit at a slower pace. Gallant Venture Bridge. Casimir Caiston stared at the screens with his mouth agape and widened eyes. Instinctively, his hand reached for his sword, gripping its hilt tightly. "By all that's good and just, he's a monster," he whispered, as he saw Wyatt continue on his hunt after mercilessly executing 16 good men and women. Equally taken aback by such efficient, emotionless brutality, Felicity could only stare blankly at the screen. She was no stranger to slaughter and carnage. She'd overseen executions, trials, and deaths in duels and accidents. She'd even seen some combat footage, but that was nothing compared to the casual way the commoner-turned-noble claimed lives. There was no hesitation, no doubt, no remorse in his actions. Maximilian was right. Whatever that man is, he won't hesitate to eliminate us. I doubt that he'll accept a formal duel if I issue it, Casimir said, as he watched the armored man proudly displaying his white periton on his chest plate, carefully approach another group of disparate forces trying to reach the hangar or any of the remaining escape pods. Unlike the previous encounters, Wyatt Staples didn't charge against them. Instead, he waited by a corner until the Marine leading the group of 7 reached him. As the Marine reached the threshold, Wyatt greeted him with a lined-up arm. A shot at point blank sent the body of the Marine crashing to the side. Taken by surprise, Wyatt then moved out of cover, firing wildly against the rest of the group. Only 9 shots were needed, each bullet leaving the barrel with a faintly visible blue trail that pierced the Marines' shields as if they weren't there. 4 of the downed Marines died instantly, their helmets pierced and warped from the inside out. The other 3 had their chests perforated. If they didn't die in the act due to shock, then they would soon be dead, unable to move anymore. With his opposition dealt with, Wyatt Staples continued his advance uncaringly. "Close blast doors," Casimir ordered, turning to his remaining bridge officers. "We can't. Captain Ciro already tried that, but the haywire mines crippled more than half our systems. We're doing everything we can to contain the ghost AIs left behind by Javier Wunder and trying to counter them as we speak, Lord Casimir." "Damnation!" Casimir cried out, slamming a fist against a panel in pure frustration. "There has to be a way to stop him. He's just one man." "Just one man," Felicity muttered. Her eyes went wide for a moment and walked over to the communications officer, shoving him away. Leaning against the terminal and pressing a button, a microphone emerged at the top of the panel. "Attention, loyal subjects of his Lord Regent," Felicity cried out through the speaker channels. "Felicity, what are you doing?" Casimir asked, taken aback by the rudeness of her actions. Felicity ignored the young Caiston, her arms shaking uncontrollably in fear, indignation, and anger. "There's an intruder currently making his way to the main deck and close to storage room A2, wearing black armor and bearing a white stag on his chest. Whoever brings him down shall receive a reward of 2 million credits. If a commoner manages to kill him, that commoner shall be rewarded with a noble title and the establishment of their own lesser house with the patronage of House Centaur." "Belay that command," Casimir tried to counter, but Felicity turned to him. "It is already done, and I'm in command, Casimir. We cannot allow that man to live past this day. He is alone, and he will be stopped," Felicity countered through harsh, uneven breaths. Casimir turned to the screen again, only to find Wyatt staring up at the camera, currently seeing him. He raised an arm and fired at the camera, destroying it. He said nothing to Felicity, but he doubted that their remaining forces would be able to stop the man. "Centaur," Wyatt hissed with disgust before shooting the camera angrily. Casimir Caiston would pay for what he'd done, but Felicity Centaur had now become his priority target. Very few would be the commoners who would resist the temptation of such an offer. But thanks to her message, he was now certain that she wasn't in the vault room. Sure, she could send that message from anywhere in the ship using the network, but with the comm scrambler active, she was forced to do so from the only place a hard line existed. "She's on the ship's bridge," Wyatt thought as he updated his map, and another route was displayed for him to follow. As he advanced, he felt burning acid flowing through his veins. They were now throwing commoners at him with false promises in the hopes of stopping him. In sheer numbers, he'd be bested. He was very aware of this, but now many more would die needlessly thanks to her. Sadly, he was correct. In less than a minute, he saw at least 50 signatures entering his IFF range. As he turned around another corner, he saw the remnants of a short-lived engagement and 6 corpses, all of them auxilia, with erected barricades. Thinking quickly, he grabbed the remaining grenade off a bandolier and took cover behind a barricade a second before the first group of auxilia appeared on the other side of the hallway. "There he is! Kill him!" shouted one of the commoners, pointing at Wyatt. Wyatt activated his grenade but didn't toss it. Not yet. "I surrender!" he shouted. "Step out of cover with your hands over your head!" another demanded. Wyatt stood up as instructed, his hands visible. "Shit, he has a grenade!" a woman shouted, pointing at the blinking white sphere. Wyatt tossed the grenade at them as hard as he could. He watched the traitors dive out of the way before he returned back to cover. Unholstering his other soul snatcher this time, he didn't hide completely to avoid the blast. The grenade exploded before touching the ground. The shock wave once again made his ears ring. A second later, he sprinted before the traitors could recover. Reaching them as they were trying to get on their knees, Wyatt executed 2 of them by shooting them from the back of their heads. Aiming as he moved, Wyatt killed 4 more in quick succession, but the remaining 4 flipped over to their back and fired their rifles in retaliation. The pilot managed to kick 1 rifle away and shoot the auxilia next to him, shooting her twice in her chest. A gurgled gasp escaped her lips as her visor was tainted red from within. "Murderer!" another shouted before his right leg was severed from his knee with a single shot. A scream of agony escaped his lips as he fell to the ground. "Anthony!" The remaining man stopped firing and tossed his rifle aside. Pulling out a grenade, he activated it, got to a knee, and lunged at Wyatt. "Wait, I surrender!" The man pinned under Wyatt's foot tried to plead, but a headshot silenced him forever. Wyatt turned in time to see the last man lunging at him. Wyatt easily dodged the man before delivering a devastating kick that made the man scream in pain as several ribs were fractured in an instant. Unable to breathe or hold on to his grenade, he gasped for air that wouldn't come. The pilot, on the other hand, ran away further down the hallway just moments before the explosion came, claiming the life of the last member of that group. Just in time for a second group to appear, this one 15 strong. They were auxilia forces mixed with a few general staff and, most shockingly, a chef due to his insignia. Instead of firing, the group stopped, seeing the carnage behind Wyatt while said man aimed at them with a steady hand and unflinching, unwavering resolve. "Drop your weapons and surrender," Wyatt warned. "There will be Royal Marines arriving soon. Do you believe you can stop them?" The group's apparent leader, an older, black-haired woman, stepped up, lowering her assault rifle. "You're not a Royal Marine?" "No," Wyatt stated flatly. "Take one more step and I'll kill you all. Drop your weapons and surrender. Don't throw your lives away from the promise of a lying blue blood." "Blue blood?" the woman asked, her companions exchanging nervous looks. Are you a commoner like us?" "Yes," replied Wyatt again. "He's lying. Look at his gear and weapons." "But he called Lady Felicity a blue blood. He ain't killing us yet. So maybe?" "Silence," the woman said, cutting off the chatter behind her. "If we surrender, we'll live. Either find escape pods or hide unarmed. Then you might yet live," Wyatt replied, taking a step closer, handguns ever at the ready. "Sounds like a better deal to me, Lord," the woman said, tossing her rifle to the ground. Shortly after, her companions followed suit. "So, what now?" "What?" "You live," Wyatt replied and asked them to move along with a head gesture. Forming a single file, the group walked past him, all of them glancing at him. "Hide, unarmed. The Royal Marines will not hesitate if they see you holding weapons of any sort," he said, and then began to walk away. The group of commoners watched him go, disappearing around a corner. A few seconds later, they heard distant shouts, an offer of surrender followed by gunfire, and finally screams of pain that were quickly silenced. Was that Fulch's group?" asked one of the commoners. The woman nodded. "He was always headstrong and too greedy for his own good," she sighed. "Come, the storage bay is close by. Might as well wait there." No one argued against her. Gallant venture, Bridge. "Useless commoners! Traitors, all of them!" Felicity cried out in anger, even as she felt her legs grow weak with each passing moment. She watched hopelessly as yet another group of commoners led by 4 Marines was all but wiped out through the use of clever tricks, ambush, surprise attacks, and treachery. That man has no honor whatsoever. The very concept seems to be anathema to such a cruel creature. Casimir would have agreed were it not for the fact that Wyatt Staples didn't always kill everyone in his way. Those who hesitated were offered clemency, and he gave it to them freely. Some tried to trick him instead, using his mercy against him. It ended poorly for those sods. As brutal and unrelenting as the man was, he wasn't just a mindless murderer. He was, beyond a doubt, a killer, ruthless, remorseless, and callous, but not entirely merciless. That, in his mind, made him all the more terrifying. Where had Princess Clara acquired such a man? The question echoed in his mind yet again with no answer to clear it. He had lost count of how many he'd killed so far. 70, 80, somewhere along those numbers? He honestly couldn't bring himself to care anymore. He had studied to become a capable and competent admiral one day, to lead ship formation, dispatch troops, oversee battle plans, revise tactics, formulate strategies, and oversee logistical operations. He'd never been part of an actual real battle before in his life. After seeing firsthand how a true battle was waged, the destruction of a single pirate freighter, his graduation task seemed utterly pointless. But seeing the man bearing the white Periton tear through his crew as he made his way to the bridge was something else entirely. He wasn't ready for any of what was happening. His hands trembled, he felt hot within his armor. His heart was pounding hard and fast, and each breath he took was lacking, almost choking him. He was trained for war, prepared for educated conflicts, and conduct suppression actions. But not the carnage he was witnessing. Silently, he began to beg that someone, anyone, would be able to stop him. No matter how merciful he seemed to be, he had a sinking feeling that there would be none for him if they were to meet face to face. "Finally, he'll be eliminated!" Felicity clamored, as 12 Marines, including 3 veterans, joined up as were taking a defensive position at an intersection. Wyatt noticed the group forming just ahead of him and stopped behind a corner. Peeking down the hallway for a second before a collective burst of bullets and laser fire forced him to take cover again, he saw 12 Marines set in an effective defensive position with 2 laser turrets at the front. They were 40 meters away, and there was no cover whatsoever between him and the traitors. Looking around, he hoped to find more weapon lockers, but they were already empty. "There has to be a way to get past them," Wyatt muttered, catching his breath. As he did so, he suddenly began to feel tired and everything was heavy. Shaking his head, he took in a deep breath. "Apply combat stimulant," he ordered, and his suit complied. He felt the rather uncomfortable pouring of the liquid directly into his bloodstream, but within seconds, he felt its effects. His tiredness was gone, replaced by alertness and awareness. Fresh adrenaline and other drugs gave his body the strength it needed to continue with his task without losing focus. Focusing on the map, he tried to find an alternate route to the bridge, and he found it. Regretfully, he'd have to backtrack nearly all the way back to the hangar, take down an elevator 3 decks down, and likely face even more resistance. He wasn't without options, but every other route he could take didn't suit well with him. He could simply sit back and wait for the Royal Marines Clara had dispatched, but that would mean he'd failed to protect his friends, that he was still that same weak boy who watched his friend die. Rejecting that option out of hand, he considered backtracking, but that would cost him time, and he didn't know if the elevators even worked anymore after being hit with haywire mines. His final option that didn't involve a frontal assault against a defense position was to try and trick them somehow. But how? Even if he went back to find another weapons locker, they were too far away for grenades to work effectively, and every other firearm available was inferior to his soul snatchers. Devoid of options, as with time quickly becoming a scarcer resource, he sighed in defeat. "Frontal assault it is," Wyatt muttered, and with the flick of a switch, the shield breaker charge was engaged again. The effective range was 50 meters, so they were within range, but he would need to be fast. Taking a deep breath, he exhaled and held his breath there. Then, in a single burst of motion, he threw himself onto the ground belly first, pointing down the hallway. The Marines were not expecting him to come out of hiding that way, and that moment of hesitation was all the time Wyatt needed to fire. 10 shots left his pistols before the Marines could respond in kind. 3 shots pierced a Marine's helm, all but destroying his head in the process. Another 3 shots turned a Marine's chest into a pulp, falling to the ground, already dead from the shock. 2 shots claimed the life of another Marine in but an instant. The last 2 pierced the head of the 4th Marine, another soul liberated from its body. Wyatt didn't see their demise, for as soon as he finished shooting, he rolled back into cover, though his shields took a pummeling, reducing them to a mere 46%. He stood up quickly, his fingers on the trigger, and still held his breath. The second the gunfire ended, he came out of cover again, but only showing his head and his arms. He shot 10 more times, all of them aimed at the turret to his right. Every shot connected, and unexpectedly, he must have hit something critical because before the Marines could return fire, the turret exploded, causing several casualties. With smoke and fire emerging from the turret, the fire support systems came to life in the hallway, covering it with a white, misty substance that extinguished the fire within seconds. Wyatt took this moment to empty his current magazines, claiming the lives of 3 additional Marines with a hail of ionized bullets that all but sliced through their shields and armor as if they weren't even there. With a quick reload, Wyatt rushed forth, ready to engage the 3 remaining standing Marines. The Marines saw him, and instead of firing their weapons, they discarded them and unsheathed their plasma swords, activating them. The first Marine rushed forth with a wide swing. Wyatt dodged it, but the Marine had expected it and kicked him in the gut for his trouble. The pilot took it in stride and lunged forth at the same time the Marine tried to slice him in 2 with a powerful downward strike. Wyatt read his movements, his training sessions with Cynthia paying off, and merely dodged by turning his body to the side. Before the Marine could do anything else, Wyatt pressed the barrel of a gun against the man's chin and squeezed the trigger. Holstering his left soul snatcher, he grabbed the man's belt and lifted him up before throwing him at the nearest charging Marine. The Marine kicked the body away before jumping at a wall, only to launch himself at Wyatt from one side, while the other Marine, a woman, charged from his other flank. Wyatt pivoted to his right, unholstering his handgun in the process and narrowly dodging having his hand sliced off by the man's strike. With a precise shot to the side of the man's head, he added another body to his increasing tally. A split second later, he ducked, evading a decapitating strike from the woman and giving him the opening to discharge 3 shots straight into her guts. The woman cried out in pure agony before her screams turned into a gurgling mess as she fell backward onto the ground, much alike cut tree back on Volantis. The woman reached up to him with a shaky, blood-stained hand. Wyatt ignored the plea for help and instead shot her in the head. He soon found 3 heavily wounded Marines hit by shrapnel from the exploding turret. Coldly, he executed them with a single shot to the head each. Wyatt sighed, taking a single moment to catch his breath before moving onward. For the next 2 minutes, he didn't encounter another point of resistance or wayward group until, at the edge of his IFF indicator, he saw nearly 50 signatures all clumped together. Approaching slowly, he reached an unsealed door. Taking position, he exhaled and stood just outside the door's threshold and found several unarmed commoners trying to hide behind a makeshift barricade of desks, unused suits, and whatever else they could find. They stared at him, fear palpable through their visors. "Are you unarmed?" he asked, even as the obvious was more than clear. We are," replied one young brave man. "Eris said that we should surrender to the man with the white-horned animal on his chest." As he said so, a woman at the back flinched nervously. "So, we surrender, Lord?" "Stay put. Royal Marines will arrive soon. Don't give them the impression that you're going to fight them," Wyatt said, then took another look inside the small conference room. Do you know if Javier Wunder, Casimir Caiston, and Felicity Cintor are present at the bridge? Lord Javier rose against Lady Felicity and Lord Casimir, Lord, an older woman wearing a patchy, worn-down suit said. He left the gallant venture. We didn't know who to obey. We chose to remain and hide. But Lord Casimir and Lady Felicity are there. You'll find them, Lord. My thanks, Wyatt replied, then lowered his weapons. Remember what I said, and you may yet live. With nothing more to say to them, he continued, leaving a relieved group of commoners behind. With his destination closer at hand, a scream of pain caught his attention, followed by several gunshots. Checking his IFF indicator, he saw a group of 6 traders nearby, likely the source of the scream. They weren't directly on his path, but as he approached the intersection, he found the traders were a group of 5 commoners and a wounded noble. There were 3 corpses a few meters away, 2 commoners, and another noble. What caught his attention was that the wounded noble had a traditional sword piercing his stomach. Even from a distance, he could tell the blue blood wouldn't survive the wound without help. Where's the biofoam? We used it all already. There has to be more somewhere. Check the emergency lockers. I already did. Lord, please stop moving. You're making your injury worse. To take me to the medical wing. No, I won't make it. Leave me, the man said, coughing. Remove my helmet. I can't breathe. The commoners obeyed and carefully carried out their task, revealing a young, handsome man with hair with brown, short hair and cybernetic eyes. Lord, I beg of you, save your strength, a commoner said, cradling the man's head. I've claimed my revenge. The slight against my house has been rectified. I am satisfied with this death, the man replied with a weakened smile. Wyatt stared at the scene from his concealed position, watching the noble slowly die. The commoners around him seemed genuinely loyal to their liege for a reason that escaped his comprehension. It was not his place to question nor to intervene, but the words of the noble and his conviction resonated within him, enough to step out of hiding. What am I doing? He's just another petulant blue blood obsessed with his oh-so-precious honor. I should walk away, Wyatt thought to himself, even as he approached closer. The commoners noticed him before long and formed around their master, clutching their handguns nervously. Wyatt looked at them for several moments, then holstered one of his soul snatchers. Reaching behind him, he opened the compartment housing his dose of biofoam. It was a small, compact canister, but its biofoam was of high quality. At least it was much better than the standard issue. Seeing the canister, the commoners lowered their weapons and opened a path to their wounded, dying lord. Wyatt, still clutching his other handgun tightly, kneeled to inspect the wound. It was, as he feared, a deep puncture that likely pierced the stomach and other organs, causing internal bleeding. Holstering his remaining gun, the heterochromatic-eyed man quickly and without warning pulled the sword out, tossing it aside even as the nobleman twitched and groaned in pain, too weak to scream. He inserted the tip of the canister and pressed the trigger, dispensing a healthy amount within the man's guts. When he felt it was enough, Wyatt pulled his canister back where it belonged. A small window appeared on his visor, indicating that 2/3 of his available biofoam had been spent. It won't save his life, but that should give you enough time to get him into a Medicare pod, if they still work, he said, unholstering his soul snatchers once more. Wait, the noble said weakly. My name is... I don't care what your name is. Take him away, Wyatt ordered before breaking into another run, leaving the bewildered group behind. As he ran, he shook his head. I shouldn't have done that, idiot.